Welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday edition of the Huddle Hub Podcast. My name is Metal Mike, and I'm joined here, as always, with the Pickmaster himself, the Candyman, Mr. Johnny H. John, how are you doing on this wonderful Football Tuesday?
Doing good. Anticipating football to return on Friday with the return of the UFL. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good. It's been a pretty good day. You know, it's Tuesday, not a bad day. You know, had some things to take care of and got some more things to take care of, but they're going to get taken care of. And that's all there is to it. But not bad. Good things. But other than that, it's been a great Tuesday. Speaking of the UFL, yes, the UFL does kick off. We are going to talk about the UFL tonight. We're going to kick things off. And John, you came up with a awesome, brilliant idea. Since it is March Madness time, the big basketball tournament is happening right now. You came up with the idea of doing a March Madness NFL style tournament. Now, basically how we're going to do this thing is we're going to run through the first two rounds. And then on social media, we're going to post a video with the semifinals the semifinals basically for you guys to pick. And yeah, that's how we're going to do it. So before we get into everything, and I turn the show over to John, because tonight John is leading the way. If you guys did not know this, when we were called the Red Zone about a year and a half ago, when we did the UFL was John's segment. John led that segment. So tonight is all John. So before we get into everything and I turn the show over to John, make sure to head over to the Huddle Hub Podcast on social media, X, TikTok, and now on Instagram. You're going to hit that follow button over on the YouTube. You're going to hit that subscribe button. That's how you follow on the YouTube. All of our social media bios are in the Twitch bio. You just click on the one that you desire to go to, because I know not everybody uses social media, and help us build the Huddle Hub Podcast going through the rest of the NFL offseason and beyond. So, John, yeah, man, UFL. Let's get into it, man. Kick off. And the floor is yours, my friend.
So we have no news.
I mean, the only big news that has come out is each home team has halftime shows, like DJ Khaled is going to be is doing a halftime show for a team. A couple musical artists are going to be doing halftime shows for the teams. Other than that, there's been nothing. Nothing. I mean, training camp is wrapping up. They're getting ready to kick off on Friday night. So other than that, I mean, if you'd like, I could pull up the musical artists that are going to be performing really quick. It would take me 2 seconds to pull that up. So it's going to be for the Louisville Kings. They announced their roster. Okay, so Ludacris is going to be performing at the Houston Gamblers halftime show opener on April 5th. Gucci Mane is going to be performing at the home opener for the Stallions. Gavin DeGraw is going to be performing at the halftime show for the Aviators home opener on April 3rd. Wale is going to be doing the halftime show for the season for the home opener for the DC Defenders. Ty Myers is going to be doing the home opener for the Renegades, and DJ Khaled is going to be doing the home opener for the inaugural season for the Storm. So those are all halftime shows. Other than that, every team has announced their final rosters today. Or yesterday, I should say. And the rosters are set. So they are ready to kick off the 2026 UFL season.
And once they do, there will be a couple of slight rule changes. For one, Pushy of the Tushy is banned in the UFL. There will be no push tush. If you want to run a quarterback sneak, you're going to do it the right way. And another rule change is, I believe if the field goal is 60 yards or more, it's 4 points.
Yes.
I know a 65-yarder would count as 4 points.
Yep.
So I like that, and I would love to see the NFL implement that, make the kickers a little bit more valuable, especially in the UFL, because there are no extra points.
Yeah.
The way they play. So this gives the kickers a little bit more importance. So you want to have that Jake Bates type kicker. Obviously, I use Jake Bates because he's a former Michigan Panther and now one of the star kickers in the NFL for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like the idea that they switched it up to 60 yards or more that they get 4 points. I agree with you. I think that's something that they should implement in the NFL because it makes the kicker position a little more important than it already is. The kicker position, I talked about this a couple weeks ago, how important the kicker position is. And some people agreed with me, some people disagreed with me. But ultimately, you think of it, your team's down by 2 points with 5 seconds left and they're in field goal range. The pressure is on for that kicker. That's how important things are. And it could be a game in the regular season that decides their playoff fate. It could be a playoff game that makes the decision whether they move on or go home. So we've seen it in the Super Bowl many times where it was left up to the kicker to win the game. So kicker position is fairly important, and to add that implement into the UFL is awesome. So I like it.
I do too. So those are the rule changes that I have and the news of the halftime show. So let's jump right into the first week of the UFL. Fourth year of spring football, third year of the UFL. And it kicks off Friday night, as Mike said, as the Birmingham Stallions take on the Louisville Kings. And before we get into talking about the game, saying who we think is going to win and why, making our picks, I just want to remind everybody that the UFL Pick Challenge is back. We didn't do it last year, but we did it the year before that. So we will be making our picks, keeping track of the records as the season goes, and letting you guys know. So we're going to start off with the Friday night game between the Birmingham Stallions and the Louisville Kings. Mike, do you want to get your input on the game, make your pick, and break it down for us?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say this number one. Yeah, spring football is back, and I'm excited for it because if you know me very well, John, you've known me for over 20 years. Football is my favorite sport. I love football. Baseball is my second. Home opener for the Phillies and pretty much all across the MLB is on Thursday. Excited for that. With spring football is here, the UFL is back, and that's something that we didn't cover last year because we were in the first year of the Huddle Hub podcast. We were kind of still catching our ground, getting used to, getting things together on our own. Now we have traction. We are on the ground running. So we're coming back with the UFL stuff. And the other thing that the UFL changed up is there's no more divisions. It's all one big standing. Top 4 teams make the playoffs. So every game in the UFL this season is going to matter. Every game, every week is going to matter because of that fact. No division champions. Top 4 teams make the playoffs, and it's going to be exciting. And the Birmingham Stallions and the Louisville Kings kicking things off on Friday night, I think is going to be a great, great game. Am I making my pick as I talk about this?
If you want to wait till the end or make it or say it at the beginning and why, choice is yours, my friend.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to say this right now. I think the Birmingham Stallions, I mean, I didn't get to get a deep look into their roster yet. I really didn't get a deep look at all the rosters yet. But I'm going to take a whim on this. I think the Louisville Kings, they win their home opener this Friday night, and it's going to be an exciting night in Louisville.
All right, so Mike is taking the Louisville Kings in their first ever UFL debut. They are one of the 4 new teams entering the league. And I am going the exact opposite. I am going the Birmingham Stallions. Why? Because the Stallions offense is stacked with talent. You have quarterback Matt Corral. I almost said Coral, but it's Matt Corral, who wasn't great in the NFL, but he's a pretty good spring football quarterback. A running back, they have Anthony McFarland, and as being a Houston, oh my goodness, who were they before they were? Oh my gosh, I can't remember their name.
Roughnecks.
What's that?
Yeah,
yes,
Roughnecks.
Thank you. Yeah, some Roughnecks fan I was, and being a Roughnecks fan in years past, Anthony McFarland was a great running back. Him and John Lovitz were a great 1-2 punch. And at wide receiver, They have possibly the best wide receiver core in the UFL. Deion Kane and Dawood Davis are already proven to be spring football stars. But then they added the Visca Chenault, formerly of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and speedster John Ross, formerly of the Cincinnati Bengals, to complement Kane and Davis. Corral has a lot of weapons to throw to. He's got a great running back to hand the ball off to. And as far as the Louisville Kings go, I feel like their season's going to rest on their quarterback, Jason Bean. He's basically making his spring football debut. And I don't really have a lot of Bean. He's a big question mark. And like I said, I think Bean's going to go as I'm sorry. The Kings are going to go as far as Bean takes them. And the only thing I really have on Jason Bean was he was on the Colts roster on 2024. So like I said, I am taking the Stallions and Mike is taking the Kings. And we'll jump to the two games on Saturday, and we'll start with the first one. The DC Defenders, the defending UFL champions, which was crazy because the Birmingham Stallions were a 3-time champion heading into last year. They won the XFL, and then they won both seasons of the UFL, which is crazy because that's something the Kansas City Chiefs couldn't even do. They couldn't even repeat, but the Birmingham Stallions did. Couldn't four-peat. That's where the DC Defenders come in, and they take on the St. Louis Battlehawks. And I think this is going to be the game of week 1. The Battlehawks have the highest attendance average in the UFL. St. Louis absolutely loves football, and they absolutely love their Battlehawks. Mike, what's your take on this game, and who'd you pick?
I mean, you're right. St. Louis loves their football, and I think they miss the Rams very, very much. They've made it very vocal in St. Louis that they wish they had the Rams back, but the Rams are steadfast in Los Angeles. They are not going back to St. Louis anytime soon. So they have the Battlehawks now to rely on when it comes to football. This reminds me of the XFL of 2001 when Las Vegas finally got a football team. The excitement that they had before the Raiders went over there back in, 2020, 2021. St. Louis has a football team now, and they're excited about it. And I think that crowd is going to bring the noise on Saturday. I'm going to go with the St. Louis Battlehawks to win their home opener.
All right. So Mike is taking the Battlehawks. I'm jotting that down in my notebook so I can keep track. Once again, I am going opposite of Mike. I am taking the defending UFL champions, the DC Defenders. And with the Defenders comes the return of Jordan Tama. I know I pronounced that name wrong. I'm bad with names like that. He is returning as their quarterback. He was runner-up for the UFL MVP last year. And to compliment him, the UFL has, to compliment him, the DC Defenders have probably the best running back tandem in the UFL. As a tandem, they led the league in rushing yards last year, and they are running backs Dean Jackson and Abram Smith. It's a great 1-2 punch, and on top of that, they have a very aggressive defense. And they are the only team in the UFL that did not lose any coaches. They kept their head coach, their offensive coordinator, and their defensive coordinator. Like I said, he ran a very aggressive defense last year. I don't expect him to change it up. I think he's going to run a very, very aggressive defense this year. On the flip side, with the Battlehawks, they announced their starting quarterback is Brandon Silver. Now, as a Roughnecks fan, some Roughnecks fans like Silver. I wasn't a big fan of Silver. I thought he played inconsistent before he got hurt with the Roughnecks. But one thing I do like about the Battlehawks, they probably have the best 1-2 punch at spring football wide receiver. Wide receivers have Hakeem Butler and Ja'Cour Pearson are spring football darlings. They are fun to watch. Butler is crazy fast. Pearson is a nice compliment to him, but they have a very unproven O-line, and I think that's going to play into a factor with Brandon Silver as their quarterback. That's why I'm taking the DC Defenders in this one. The second game on Saturday has the Houston Gamblers. Houston now has rebranded the Gamblers. The Roughnecks are gone, playing the Dallas Renegades. Now, if you remember, the Renegades were formerly from Arlington. They moved them to Dallas this year. Who do you have in this one, Mike? And what's your take?
So for the first time this week, I'm going to be taking a road team. I'm going to be taking the Houston Gamblers. Now, about 2 years ago, when we did our pick challenge for the UFL, I was very, very big on Houston when they were the Roughnecks, and they just didn't have it. Yeah, they didn't have a good season. It was not a good season for the Roughnecks. They won, I think, 1 or 2 games that year, which was a rough go for them. They switched up the name. They have a little bit of a new look. I'm excited for them. Yeah, they're on the road and they're heading to Dallas, but it's not far from Houston. I'm going to go with the Gamblers on the road against the Renegades.
Okay, so Mike is taking the Gamblers. And that was last year that the Roughnecks had a very, very rough year, because before that they had PJ Walker as their quarterback, and he just lit it up for them.
I knew one of the years they had a bad year.
Yeah, last year they were not very good at all. But this seems to be a trending thing. You took the Gamblers. I'm flipping the script, and I'm taking the Dallas Renegades. Why? Because Luis Perez returns at quarterback for the Renegades. There's a reason this guy's called Mr. Spring Football. He shows up, he plays well, and he's behind a very, very strong O-line, probably the best O-line in the UFL. And the Renegades have 14 players from last season returning on defense. They have their core defense group together, that strong offensive line, and a quarterback who's pretty darn good at spring football. That's why I am taking the Renegades. The last game on the UFL Week 1 slate happens on Sunday, and it is a matchup between 2 new teams. The Columbus Aviators take on the Orlando Storm. Mike, what are your thoughts?
Well, like I said, I didn't get to study rosters as deep as I would have liked to get prepared for us picking these games. So I'm kind of taking things on a limb here in week 1. Week 2, I'm going to be better at picking here. So it wouldn't surprise me if I go 0 for 4 this week. It wouldn't. With that being said, I'm going to go with the home team, the Orlando Storm. They're going to have the home advantage. Columbus traveling down to Florida where the weather is getting hot. And as we know in football, weather does play a factor. And we're in the springtime now where, again, it's getting warmer down there in Florida. Where Columbus, Ohio, it is still a little colder. It might be a little bit of an effect factor. I'm going to go with the Storm at home.
Okay, so Mike is going with the Storm. Let me quick mark that down on my book. And this completes the sweep because I have taken the Aviators. So we have every single game taken. Now, every single game the opposite. Now, why am I taking the Aviators? Well, their strength is in their running game. Toa, Tua, and John Lovett. Now, as a Roughnecks fan, the tandem of John Lovett and Anthony McFarland was money. 1-2 punch. I know Lovett could handle his end of a 1-2 scenario. I don't see any reason why Tua could. The only thing about the Aviators is they have no clear number 1 receiver. Every receiver on their roster has either been the 2 or 3. So either their quarterback is going to have to spread the ball around, or one of those guys need to step up and show they can be the number one receiver for this group. Now, my thoughts on the Storm and why I picked against them. The Storm do not have a proven quarterback. The player that's expected to start is Dorian Thompson-Robinson, formerly of the Cleveland Browns, and he was just atrocious last season. He really couldn't make it in the NFL. Now, this is spring football. The talent level isn't as high as it is in the NFL. So there's a chance he could just shake off last season with the Browns. Because let's be honest, other than Shedeur Sanders shining for a couple games, no one played good for the Browns at quarterback. So this could be an awakening for Dorian Thompson-Robinson, but he is expected to start. They have a very unproven offense. So their defense is really going to have to step up, control the pace of the game, and really try to shut the Aviators down. I'm not sure their defense can do that. So I feel like I'm going to take the safe pick here and let the Aviators control the game on their ground with their double-headed threat at the running back, and I am going with the Aviators, and that's why I'm picking them. One more thing I want to add here, and I forgot to mention it. I had a quick look it up on my phone when we were talking about the Houston Gamblers and Dallas Renegades. Tua Tagovailoa's brother, Tualia, was signed with the Houston Gamblers. I don't think he's starting, but he did make their roster.
That's pretty cool. Well, hey, Tua Tagovailoa's brother's on a football team. It's not the NFL, but it's the UFL. And with the talks of the possibilities of the UFL becoming a farm league system in the future for the NFL,
that would be so cool.
That's a pretty cool step. So, all right, well, that's it for the UFL kickoff 2026. Friday night is game 1 of week 1. So make sure you're tuning in. We'll be back next Tuesday with the follow-up from week 1, and then we'll get you guys ready for week 2 as well. So, John, you came up with this idea. You ran this idea past me, and I automatically said, let's do it. This sounds so awesome with the big college basketball tournament happening right now. You came up with this March Madness NFL-style tournament. So what John did was he split the 32 teams. He gave me 16, and John took 16. And so what we're going to do is we're going to run down the first round, and we're going to run down the second round. And then when it gets to the semifinals of each division, conference, whatever you want to call it, we're going to post a video on social media and let you guys decide what teams move on and ultimately pick a champion. So, but you got to
make the Final Four, what team make the finals, and who is the champion.
But you got to rely on the teams that we picked to get you there. So, John, with that being said, here we go. NFL Madness Tournament is underway. So,
why don't we start with your bracket in the East? So, take her away, Mike.
Okay. So how I did this was, number one, I had to sit down and think about how am I going to pick my teams, right? Because I can't just go off of a whim and say, oh, this team, because there's a possibility this team could upset another team, or this team wins because of this, right? So how I did this was I took six statistics from the league, and that's how I was able to come up with my winner. Points for, points against, yards for, yards against, turnovers, and takeaways. Now, because there's 6 categories, if it just so happened that we have a tie in statistic, then the ultimate winner, the winner ultimately is the team that had the best record at the end of the regular season. Okay. So the first matchup that I had to decide was the Patriots and the Jets. Patriots went 14-3. Jets went 3-4. The Patriots just swept the Jets in statistics. The biggest statistic was the yards for. The Patriots almost outbeat the Jets by 2,000 yards this year. 1,968 yards. Yeah, 1,968 yards. The Patriots had more than the Jets, but they ultimately swept the Jets in statistics. The next matchup was the Philadelphia Eagles against the Cincinnati Bengals. And listen to this. Points for, the Bengals won by a plus 35. Points against, the Eagles won by a negative 167. So there was a 167-point difference. Yeah, that Eagles defense, man. The Bengals won the yards for category plus by 305 yards. The Eagles won the yards against by negative 1,134 yards. Okay. And then turnovers. The Bengals had 24. The Eagles had 15. So the Eagles won that by 9. But when it came to takeaways, they both had 21 takeaways. So there was a tie right there. But the Eagles ended up winning 3 of the 6 categories. We had 1 tie and the Bengals took 2. So the Eagles ended up winning this matchup. The next matchup is the 9-8 Lions against the 8-9 Ravens. Okay. And the Lions ended up winning this one by 4 statistics to 2. Very close statistics, though. I'll say that. The numbers were fairly close. My next matchup was the Bills against the Giants. Okay, the 12-5 Bills against the 4-13 Giants. And the Bills won this one by a landslide of 5 statistics to 1. The only statistic that the Giants won was the turnover statistic. They had 17 turnovers. The Bills had 19. So, but the Bills ultimately won this matchup. So that was my first round matchup. Patriots, Eagles, Lions, Bills. That's the matchup for the next round. So,
all right. So we got some pretty good matchups here. No upsets. The 1 Patriots taking on the 3 Eagles and the 4 Lions taking on the 2 Bills. I'm going to jump diagonal and I'm going to go to my Midwest bracket. And my first matchup was the number 1 seeded Broncos taking on the 8 seeded Cardinals. And basically the way I did it was I compared offenses and defenses. I compared the eye test. And then a big deciding factor was if the teams played head to head. So clearly the Broncos have the better team than the Cardinals. So the Broncos get that win. The next round, and this was a little tricky for me. There were a couple matchups I had that were tricky. The 3 seed Steelers take on the 6 seeded Chiefs. And believe it or not, the 6 seeded Chiefs overtook the 3 seeded Steelers. Why? Because for one, head to head during the season, the Chiefs beat the Steelers. Now you can argue that was before Patrick Mahomes got hurt, but a win is a win. And the Chiefs had both the better offense and the better defense statistically in yards allowed than the Chiefs did. So that's why the Chiefs advanced and upset the Steelers. My next matchup was the 4th-seeded Packers taking on the 5th-seeded Falcons. Now, this one was probably the hardest one I've had to pick. They didn't play each other during the season. Head-to-head, they were very close in stats. I mean, very similar. Like, one was just above the other one. So basically what I did was I used the eye test for this one. And the Falcons struggled so much at quarterback that I just couldn't ignore that fact. The Packers had it figured out with Jordan Love. So the Packers advanced over the Falcons. And my last matchup is the number 2 seed Bears taking on the number 7 seed Commanders. So statistically, the Bears beat the Commanders in offense and defense. And during the season, the Bears beat the Commanders. They got revenge on them from the Hail Mary game from last season. So the Bears advance. And in my Midwest region, I have the number 1 seed Broncos taking on the number 6 seed Chiefs and the number 4 seed Packers taking on the number 2 seed Bears. How did your South region turn out, Mike?
All right. So in the South region, the first matchup was the Los Angeles Rams against the Tennessee Titans, 12-5 against a 3-14 team. And the Rams, they steamrolled the Titans in statistics, plus 234 points for net. The Titans scored 132 points less. The Rams earned 2,296 more yards than the Titans, 2,296 in yards. The Rams had 299 yards less given up, and they had 12 more takeaways than the Tennessee Titans. And the Rams had 4 more the Titans had 4 more turnovers than the Rams. So the Rams, without question, won this matchup in statistic. The 13-4 Jacksonville Jaguars took on the 7-10 Dolphins in my next matchup, and the Jaguars swept the Dolphins in statistics. The Jaguars had 31 takeaways this season. They were a plus 13 because they only gave up 18 turnovers this year. Crazy. Where the Dolphins had 20 takeaways, but 24 turnovers. The statistics, they were kind of close. I mean, if these two played each other in a game, or they had one more opportunity to earn more statistics, the Dolphins probably could have gotten a little closer, but the Jaguars ultimately defeated them. My next matchup was the 12-5 Houston Texans against the 6-11 New Orleans Saints, and fairly close matchup. For points for, the Texans were a plus 98. For points against, the Texans were a negative 88. In yards for, the Texans were plus 228. In yards against, the Texans were negative 383. In takeaways, the Texans were a plus 9. And then in turnovers, they were a negative 12. They only gave the ball away 12 times this season, which is crazy. And we know that Texans offense, they kind of struggled a little bit at the beginning of the year. So for their turnovers to be that low was phenomenal. My next matchup was the 8-9 Panthers against the 8-9 Buccaneers, and
you have the Texans winning.
I had the Texans winning. Yeah, they swept.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I didn't catch that.
I had the 8-9 Panthers against the 8-9 Buccaneers. Okay, in points for, the Buccaneers won. In points against, the Panthers won. In yards for, the Buccaneers won. In yards against, the Panthers won. So it came down to the turnover situation. The Buccaneers won by takeaways by 2 points, and the Buccaneers won in the turnover by -7. So the Buccaneers ended up upsetting by rank-wise, because they were ranked number 5. Panthers were number 4. The Buccaneers ended up defeating the Panthers.
Set alert.
And I believe that's it. That's the matchups. That's my first round matchups right there.
So the South, in the next round, you have the first-seeded Rams taking on the 3-seeded Jaguars, and the 5th-seeded Buccaneers taking on the 2nd-seed Texans.
Yep.
Well, we started with you for the first round, so we'll jump to me to start the next round. And my first matchup,
we have your other bracket.
Oh, that's right. I forgot the West. I forgot. Okay. My mistake. So the first round, the first matchup I have in the West region is the 1st-seeded Seahawks taking on the 8th-seeded Raiders. And let's be honest, the Raiders were a disaster this year. So the Seahawks easily beat them. And then I have the 3-seeded Chargers taking on the 6th-seeded Cowboys. Unfortunately, they didn't play each other this year, so I couldn't add that in there. And the Chargers had the better defense, but the Cowboys had the better offense. And I just feel that overall, the Chargers were the better team this year by the eye test. So that was kind of the tiebreaker there. So the 3rd-seeded Chargers get the win. Then the next matchup, the 4th-seeded Vikings take on the 5-seeded Colts. And this was another matchup were statistically, both teams were very close and they didn't play each other. So then I had to go by the eye test. And I feel even though both quarterbacks got hurt with McCarthy and Daniels, the Colts were way more stable at that position because they were like 8-1 before Daniels got hurt. Wow, the Vikings just seemed to struggle even with McCarthy playing. So to me, that put the Colts just above them. So I have the 5th seeded Colts upsetting the 4th seeded Vikings. And my last matchup is the 2nd seeded 49ers taking on the 7th seeded Browns. And this was another one where they kind of flipped, where the Niners had the better offense, the Browns had the better defense, but they did play each other head to head with the 49ers going to Cleveland and winning. So to me, that was kind of the tiebreaker there. So the 49ers take down the 7th-seeded Browns. So the second round of my West region are the 1st-seeded Seahawks taking on the 3rd-seeded Chargers, the 5th-seeded Colts taking on the 2nd-seed 49ers. So we'll go back to you, Mike,
All right.
and you could pick your region, whichever one you want to start your second round.
All right. So we are going to start with the East region. And the first matchup was the New England Patriots 14-3 taking on the 11-6 Philadelphia Eagles. And I'm just going to say this right now. The Patriots, the only categories that they did not win in was the turnover categories. In points for, they were a plus 111 points. They, in points against, they only gave the Eagles only gave up 5 more points than the Patriots this season. Only 5.
Wow.
I
said, wow.
Yeah. In yards for, the Patriots won by 1,158 yards. But when it came to yards against, the Patriots only gave up 300. The Eagles only gave up 322 more yards than the Patriots. So pretty close there, but the Patriots win that. When it came to turnovers, the Eagles had 21 takeaways and the Patriots had 19. So the Eagles won that by a +2. And then in turnovers, the Patriots had 16 turnovers. The Eagles had 15 turnovers. So the Eagles won that category. But ultimately, at the end, the Patriots ended up winning statistically. So the Patriots are moving on to the semifinals of their region. The next matchup, the 12-5 Buffalo Bills against the 9-8 Detroit Lions. And this one was very, very, very close. In points for, the Bills and the Bills and Lions, they both scored 481 points. So they tied in points for. The Bills only gave up, or the Lions only gave up 48 points more than the Bills this season. In yards for, the Bills only had 53 more yards than the Lions had. Only 53. On defense, the Lions gave up 659 more yards than the Bills. In takeaways, the Bills had 1 more takeaway than the Lions. And in turnovers, the Lions had 4, or the Bills had 4 more turnovers than the Lions. But the Bills ultimately, even with the tie of the points for, the Bills won every other category but turnovers. So the Bills are moving on to the semifinals to take on the 1-seeded Patriots.
All right, a 1-2 matchup in the East to decide who represents them in the Final Four. The 1 Patriots take on the 2 Bills. And I'm going to jump right across from you to the West for my side of the bracket, starting with the 1st-seeded Seahawks taking on the 3rd-seeded Chargers. And this one was a little bit closer than people might think for me. Seattle had the better offense, but defensive-wise, the Chargers actually had a slightly better defense. This is how close their yards allowed per game was. The Chargers allowed 285.2 yards, and the Seahawks allowed 285.6 yards. So 0.4 yards was pretty much the the difference, 0.4 yards. Their defenses were very similar. They did not play each other during the season. And if you ask me, the eye test shows Seattle was a much, much stronger team. And that's why I chose the Seattle Seahawks to advance to the next round over the Chargers. Next up is the number 5 seed Colts taking on the number 2 seed 49ers. And the first thing I always checked for was, again, who has the better offense and defense. The Niners having a slightly better offense, having 351.4 yards per game, while the Colts had 345.6 yards per game. We go to the defensive side of the ball. And again, another close one. The 49ers allowed 340.2 yards per game. The Colts allowed 349.8 yards per game. Very similar offense, very similar defense. But if you want to say there was a tiebreaker, if there was one, they did play each other head to head. And the 49ers just took it to the Colts 48-27. So despite them being very close statistically, I took that head-to-head matchup into consideration, and that is why I moved the 49ers past the Colts. So my next round, I guess we would call this the Great Eight, has the first seeded Seahawks taking on the second seeded 49ers.
All right. Well, my South quarterfinal brackets. First matchup I'm going to talk about is the 12-5 Texans taking on the 8-9 Buccaneers, and the Texans won this one not so much by a landslide. They won every category, but did not win by much of a landslide. They had plus 24 points against the Buccaneers. They only gave up, the Buccaneers gave up 116 more points than the Texans. The Texans only had 112 more yards on offense than the Buccaneers, where the Buccaneers gave up 1,020 more yards than Houston. As we know, Houston had the number one defense this year. So when it came to takeaways, the Texans had 6 more than the Buccaneers, and the Buccaneers gave up 4 more turnovers than the Texans did. The Texans ended up sweeping the Buccaneers in every statistic that for the Texans moving on. And in my final matchup, the 12-5 Rams, the 13-4 Jaguars. John, listen to this one very, very closely, because this has to do with something that we mentioned at the top of this segment. Ready for this one?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's hear it.
In the points for category, the Rams were a plus 44. In the points against, the Jaguars were a negative 10. So the Jaguars won that category because the Rams gave up 10 more points than the Jaguars this year. So we're 1-1 in categories. In yards for, the Rams had 974 more yards than the Jaguars. Rams are up 2-1. The Jaguars, the Rams gave up 406 more yards than the Jaguars did this year. So the Jaguars are in their second category. We're tied 2-2. In takeaways, the Jaguars had 31. The Rams had 26. The Jaguars were a plus 5 in takeaways this year against the Rams. And in turnovers, the Jaguars gave up 18. Rams gave up 15. The Rams were a negative 3. Both teams 3-3 in categories. And like I said, the ultimate decision of who wins a matchup when it comes down to a tie is the team that had the better record, and the Jaguars won one more game than the Rams. Thus, the Jaguars move on to the next round.
Whoa! That's got to be the upset of the tournament right there.
So we have the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans in the semifinals of the South region.
Wow! Well, this is crazy so far, because in your East region, the Great Eight, you have an AFC East matchup between the Patriots and Bills.
Yep.
In my West region, I have an NFC West matchup between the Seahawks and the 49ers.
Yep.
And then in your South region, you have a matchup between the Jaguars and the Texans. It's all division matchups so far.
Yep.
Now, will that trend continue in
Well,
this round? What's that?
it kind of can't, because you already have in your quarterfinal, you have the Broncos Chiefs in the AFC West and the Packers Bears in the NFC North. So it's going to be an AFC West versus NFC North matchup in your semifinal for your Midwest.
But it's not possible for it to be actually in the same division like the other ones. But that's okay.
Yep.
I'm going to start with the first matchup of my 1-seeded Denver Broncos taking on the 6-seeded Chiefs. The Chiefs are having a really good run so far, upsetting the number 3 seed Steelers. But then they ran into the 1st-seeded Denver Broncos. The Broncos statistically had the second best defense in the league, only behind the Houston Texans, and they had the better offense. Not to mention, they swept the Chiefs. They beat them twice this year during the season. It was a no-brainer that the Broncos would take the Chiefs in this tournament. So that all my qualifications, they passed. So the Broncos advance to the Great Eight. Now the next one. This was a tough matchup for me. The number 4 Packers against the number 2 Bears. So I'm going to start off with offense. The Packers had... No, I'm sorry. Forgive me on that. The Bears had the better offense. The Bears actually had the 6th best offense in the league. But then we switch over to defense. And here's where the big difference is. While the Bears had a great offense, their defense was 29th in the league. That is such a huge jump. And the Packers were 12th in the league on offense. So kind of swaying in the Packers' favor right now. Eye test, to me, they were kind of the same. During the season, they split it. The Packers won in Green Bay. The Bears won in Chicago. The deciding factor for me was their playoff match, where the Bears won. They won the head-to-head matchup 2-1, and that is why the Bears sneaked by the Packers. And I really mean it when I said they snuck by the Packers, because I was really ready to write an upset here. But because of that playoff win, the Bears advance to the Great Eight, and my Midwest bracket is set with the number 1 Broncos taking on the number 2 Bears. So as it stands right now, the Great Eight, the East, the 1-seeded Patriots taking on the 2-seeded Bills. In the South, the 3-seeded Jaguars take on the 2-seeded Texans. The winner of those 2 matchups will face off in the Final Four, with that winner going into the championship game. On the other side of the bracket, you have in the West region, the 1-seeded Seahawks taking on the 2-seeded 49ers. And in the Midwest, the 1-seeded Broncos taking on the 2-seeded Bears. The winner of those 2 matchups will meet in the Final Four, and the winner of that making the championship game. And those are the matches you all have to vote on and get to vote on, and have fun with this. Have fun with this. Pick your teams. Say your reason why, even if it's some silly reason like, oh, well, the Broncos, I like their colors better than the Bears. Just give us a reason why. It doesn't have to be, oh, well, this team was better in this stat, or this team, was better in this. Just have fun with it, guys. Just give us your answers. We're going to tally up the votes, and you all will get to pick who is the March Madness Huddle Hub March Madness champion for 2026.
So make sure you are leaving your pick down in the comment of this video, and we will announce on next Tuesday's episode, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Twitch, on the Huddle Hub Podcast, and over on the YouTube at the Huddle Hub Pod. Join us for the announcement of who you guys pick as our March Madness champion.
We're looking forward to see those replies and to see who you guys crown champions.
You cut. I was about to ask you. I was like, John, let's quick cut our sound bite so we can post our video, but you went right into it. So great. When I go into editing, I could just clean it up.
I figured.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was. I'm not a rookie to this type of video editing and stuff, so that's why I jumped right into it for you. And if I will add this, if by chance, by the whatever chance that nobody does pick, Mike and I do have a backup plan. We will finish our brackets and then debate who the champion is.
Yes.
And we each have to pretty much convince the other why their champion should be the champion.
Yeah. So
without us knowing what team is in the finals. So we won't tell each other who it is.
Nope.
That's going to be the fun part. It's going to be a blind debate.
It was a blind thing tonight. I didn't even know who you picked. You didn't know who I picked for anything as we moved on. So that's why your reaction to my Jaguars win was a natural reaction. So
I did not see that coming. No. I really did not see that coming. And to be honest with you, I kind of half expected you to pick the Eagles over the Patriots too.
No, I wanted to do it fair, and I had to do it in a way where it was going to be fair. John, we have about 7 minutes left on the show. We normally run 60. We have 7 minutes left. Now, I know tonight's show was strictly around the UFL.
Drag and do the hula.
I know tonight's show was mainly surrounded by the UFL and our March Madness tournament. There's a couple things that came out in news, so I'm going to leave this up to you. Should we talk about this new stuff quick, or do you just want me to save it for the Saturday edition and I'll talk about it then on the weekend edition?
We could talk about it now. There is something I wanted to mention that I did see right before we got on the air, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals re-signed Joe Flacco to a 1-year deal.
Yes.
So they lost Jake Browning, and now brought back Joe Flacco to back up the injury-prone Joe Burrow. As much as I hate to say that, but the last 2 seasons have not been great for Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I had the Joe Flacco thing on the docket here. He's going to make about $6 million, and he's going to be accruing about $9 million in cap this year, and it's pending on incentives and everything. So Joe Flacco heading back to the Cincinnati Bengals. Another signing we had was quarterback Trevor Siemian is going to be heading out to Atlanta, so now that quarterback room is a little stacked out there in Atlanta. Your thoughts on Trevor Siemian heading out to Atlanta and joining that quarterback room?
I like that move. I liked him when he was in Denver. I thought he was a good backup quarterback, good guy to come in if you need him to, if your quarterback gets shaken up or hurt. So I think it's a great depth move, especially since we don't know the status of Michael Penix Jr. or, Tua's there too. He's an injury-prone guy. So get a backup that has experience starting. And I like that move a lot as far as a depth move, because that's Atlanta's biggest question mark is the quarterback situation. That's why they didn't advance in my tournament, because their quarterback situation was pretty much the deciding factor when it came down to the eye test.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
like that move a lot.
You look at that quarterback, the quarterback situation in Atlanta, it's like you look at the roster and it's like, okay, this is a roster that can go out and make some noise and possibly go deep. And it's like the quarterback position is their biggest fault, which stinks so much for them. I think Atlanta, if they would get that quarterback situation figured out, they could be a dominant force in the NFC South. Definitely dominant.
I completely agree. I mean, look at the last 2 years. They were in it till the very end last season. Or I guess 2 years ago, because the season just ended.
When Penix took over in like week 12, yeah.
Yeah. They didn't have a shot because of tiebreakers. but it was pretty much a 3-way tie when the season ended, record-wise, just about.
Yeah, it
So, I
was.
mean, Atlanta is like 1/2 step or 1 step away from being a real contender in that division. And the quarterback play is the reason why, because Kirk Cousins didn't step up for him. Penix got hurt. You had Desmond Ritter there last season, if I remember, 2 seasons ago, if
Yeah,
I remember right.
it was him. Yep.
And they benched him for Penix. If they can figure out that quarterback spot, that they're going to be set to compete with the Panthers, who are on the rise. The Buccaneers, they lose one of their top offensive weapons. We don't know exactly where they're going to be because you have Chris Godwin, who's injury prone, and then
Mike
you have
Evans is
2
out.
young receivers who really are going to have to step up this year. One showed promise last year, the other showed flashes. So the Buccaneers are a big question mark. So if Atlanta can get quality play out of that quarterback position, they could really contend for that division.
Definitely. A couple things I'm going to run down quick because there is something that happened yesterday that I want to talk to you about, and I want to kind of have a small conversation about it. So real quick, Jake Bobo, wide receiver of the Seahawks, he ended up re-signing with Seattle. Chris Stoll, long snapper of the Seahawks, he also re-signed. Running back Travis Homer has signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Seattle Seahawks made some moves yesterday. First one, Charles Cross, offensive tackle, has signed a 4-year, $104.4 million extension with the team. But the big news coming out of yesterday, wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba had signed a 4-year, $168.6 million extension. This is making him the highest paid wide receiver in league history. Now, John, your thoughts on the Seahawks, re-signing Jackson Smith-Njigba, giving him this big contract. I mean, yes, this year he had a great year. Do you see him having great years moving forward, or do you think there's going to be a time where he does slow down and the Seahawks possibly rethink this contract?
Oh, I think he's going to have a lot of good years. He's only 24 years old. So if he's going to slow down, it's going to be towards the end of this contract. They're going to get his best years right now. He was clearly the best receiver in the league this year. I mean, you could argue that maybe Puka Nacua was like 1B because he had such a good year too. But he gets a quality quarterback in Sam Darnold, who completely resurrected his career after he got off the Jets and got out of the backup role, resurrects his career with Minnesota, continues it in Seattle. So, and you got to think they lost Kenneth Walker III. Okay. Unless they draft a running back, which I am expecting them to do, all they have right now is Charbonnet. So, and he got hurt last year towards the end of the year when they could have used that 1-2 punch. So I think if they don't draft the running back to go along with Charbonnet, then Smith-Njigba is going to get a lot more looks. Darnold's stats are going to be higher. Cooper Kupp is going to have a bigger role. Shaheed's going to have a bigger role. So, I mean, there is definitely a chance that Jackson Smith-Njigba could have a better year than he did last season, which is insane if you think about it.
Yeah.
But like I said, I do think Seattle addresses that need for a running back in the draft, if not in the first round, maybe the second round, to continue that 1-2 punch. But rookie running backs aren't a guarantee.
No.
So either way, I could really see Jackson Smith-Njigba taking another step forward if that's even possible. So to answer your question, I don't think they're going to regret this contract. And he's, like I said, he's 24 years old. I don't see him slowing down until towards the end of this contract.
Okay.
So I think it was a great move for this re-signing.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't think they're going to regret this contract at all. I mean, you go out to Minnesota and you look at, the situation, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase out in Cincinnati, other wide receivers around the league, Amon-Ra St. Brown out in Detroit. Like, they got the big contracts in year 2, year 3 of their career. And look at what they've been able to do since getting those contracts. They've been able to stay above that, that acceptance rate of these guys are having great seasons. So I think Jackson Smith and Jigba is also, I don't think the Seattle Seahawks are going to regret this, regardless on how the 2026 season or beyond turns out for them. They are going to pretty much push out every penny of this contract with Jackson Smith and Jigba as well. So, but the one thing I wanted to have a conversation with you quick was the news that came out yesterday, and this is the last thing on the docket. Tight end of the Kansas City Chiefs, Travis Kelce. We seen a couple weeks ago, he signed a 1-year, $14 million deal to come back for his 14th season. Yesterday, he signed a 3-year, $54.7 million deal with the Chiefs. Now, I posed the question on our social media, does Travis Kelce plan on possibly playing longer than just 1 year? Some of the comments were saying that this is just a depth move. Some of the people were saying that this is just he's going to be there as a mentorship. But what do we normally see player mentors doing? Suiting up and playing. They don't be full-timers. They turn themselves into in and out every other play type of guys, which could Travis Kelce turn into that? Maybe. But I see Travis Kelce, if he's with him signing this 3-year deal, if he's going to be a mentor, I think we're still going to see him in pads and a helmet. I just don't think we're going to see him be a full-time tight end after the 2026 season, if that mentorship is a thing. My last thing before I turn it over to you is I think the Chiefs in the draft are definitely going to go after Kenyon Sadiq, the Oregon tight end. That's who I think they go after in round 1, is the tight end out of Oregon, Kenyon Sadiq. So, John, your thoughts on Travis Kelce? Do you think he might have the plans of playing more than just this 1 year? Do you think it's a mentorship, or do you think it's going to be a year-to-year basis for Travis Kelce?
I think it's going to be a year-to-year basis. I do think he plays next year. And it's funny you should mention the Oregon tight end, because I actually think he's going to go to the Eagles, to be honest with you. I think even though they brought back Dallas Goedert, I think they are going to still go after a tight end in the draft. And I think Sadiq is going to be the guy. But I do think that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to draft the tight end, because I'm not sure Noah Gray is the guy to succeed Travis Kelce.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, they lost Hollywood Brown. They still have Rashid Rice and Xavier Worthy, and they re-sign. And I'm sorry, they bring in Kenneth Walker III, which is great. But the tight end spot has always been the sweet spot for the Kansas City Chiefs. So they're just one of those teams that have old reliable. The 49ers are the same way with George Kittle. They're known for their tight end. And I don't see them changing their identity at all, even though Walker is a huge upgrade over Pacheco. I still think they're going to draft their tight end, someone from Travis Kelce, to mentor, help develop over this year and next year. And I could even see them running a 2 tight end set just to give the rookie some reps with Kelce. But I do think he sticks around this year and next year. The 3rd year, I don't know about the 3rd year, because Travis Kelce's 36 years old. I don't know if we're going to see him playing when he's 39. I could see 37, maybe 38.
Uh-huh.
But 39, I don't know about that. So my answer, they're going to draft a tight end. He's going to mentor him for a year or 2. And I think that's what the Chiefs are going to go in that direction.
And that's my point, is the mentorship. He's ultimately going to have to get into pads and a helmet. He's not just going to stand on the sideline and not be suited up during a game and standing there and talking to the tight end. No, he's going to put himself in the position to where he can mentor this new tight end while being on the field with said player, depending on whoever that may be. I mean, Kenyon Sadiq to Philadelphia real quick. I like that idea. I do. The thing is, though, is Philadelphia, they're sitting at 23 right now. Right now. Again, the looming rumors of an A.J. Brown getting traded, whether it's to New England or whether it's elsewhere. I'm going to say this right now. I have not done my official mock drafts yet. I've been doing practice mock drafts. In one of my practice mock drafts, I do have A.J. Brown getting traded to the New England Patriots. But in another one, I have the Eagles trading up with the Raiders to trading A.J. Brown to the Raiders, not for the number one, but I worked it out with the trades and everything to where the Eagles end up earning another draft pick in the first round with trading with the Raiders. So, but that's all we got for the news. That's it. And that's all we got for you guys here on the Tuesday episode of the Huddle Hub Podcast. Before we get out of here, make sure you're heading over to the Huddle Hub Podcast over on social media, over on X, TikTok, and on Instagram at the Huddle Hub Pod. Make sure you're hitting that follow button. Over on the YouTube, hitting that subscribe button, and over on Twitch, hitting that follow button as well. All the links to our social medias are in the bio of the Twitch channel. You're just going to go head over there, click on the one that you desire, because I know not everybody uses every social media, and help us build the Huddle Hub Podcast going through the rest of the NFL offseason and beyond. John, your social medias are on the bottom. Again, I know you're a very busy man right now. You're trying to figure things out with your streaming and everything like that. Do you have anything going on social media that you want to let people know right now?
I came up with a streaming schedule. I'm not ready to announce it yet, but I am looking to come back in April. I will say I'm going to continue streaming Dead by Daylight, not as much as I have before, but I'm also going to be streaming WWE 2K26. I look forward to that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So those are the two games I'm going to really focus on when I stream. It will be April. Not exactly sure when yet in April, but look for me back next month. So that's pretty much the update that I have.
Well, make sure you're going over to John's social medias, hitting that follow button, and make sure you're keeping an eye out for when John does go back to streaming live, like he said, in April. But checking out all his recorded content that he has up on social media right now, you can go check that out. And make sure you're following John and supporting everything he's doing on social media from now and in the future. You can find me on Instagram, X, YouTube, and TikTok. Yes, I'm adding in YouTube. Why? Because I finally, John, have been putting together a plan to utilize my personal YouTube.
All right.
Yes,
Welcome
I have
to the
been.
Dance.
And just like you said, you plan on going back to streaming in April. I plan on launching content on my YouTube at the beginning of April. So, with that being said, and if it happens sooner, it's going to happen sooner, but the focus is for the beginning of April to start posting some content on my YouTube. I don't want to announce right now what the content is. Does it have to do with video games? Yes. But I don't want to announce the particular gaming content that will be coming yet. So that will all be done in due time. Go follow me, Metal Mike 714. All across social media. That's where you can find me. I do TikTok lives for Fortnite, as Fortnite Chapter 7 Season 2 is live right now, and is a very fun season. I'm loving this new season. So that's all we got for you guys tonight. I will see you on the Saturday edition of the Huddle Hub Podcast, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here on Twitch and YouTube. Be good to each other. Be kind to each other. Take care of each other. Be patient with each other. Remember, the world is not moving as fast as you think. Until Saturday, we'll see you guys later. Deuces.